It is a problem that Democrats have had for years. I've been banging the drum on this for, I don't know how, probably 10 years, if not longer on this. We need to get back to being the party of common sense, that people look at us and say, we understand you. We appreciate what you say because you speak our language.
Well, kids, we made it. The results are in, and it looks like Donald J. Trump will be the 47th president of the United States. You know, being extremely critical of mainstream media and the current regime, I didn't really take seriously the sentiment that this election would be the most important one to date and would be remembered throughout the remainder of our country's history. But oh, how wrong I was. Because look, Trump didn't just beat Harris. No. He absolutely demolished her. And probably the biggest red wave we have seen in decades. He not only secured the popular vote, but he single-handedly won every single swing state and had support growth in every demographic with the exception of maybe one or two. How could this happen? I mean, this is Trump we're talking about. The fascist, the racist, the misogynistic, money-grubbing dictator who would stop at nothing until every single last one of his political enemies and every brown person was in chains and sent to work camps. How could it be that so many Americans of all ages, races, creeds, and religions would vote into office someone so despicable and detrimental to our country's future and values? In the few days following the election, we have seen the media's bafflement of such an outcome, heard the cries of Americans whose worst fears have been realized as they condemn their neighbors, families, and friends, who are all part of the overwhelming majority who voted the evil orange man into office, and the sea of entertainers and influential figures who also share the sentiment. Again, how could this have happened? There's been a lot of finger pointing in the last few days. Harris's team blames Joe Biden. Liberal media journalists and the wise ladies at The View blame Black and Latino men, as well as those ignorant white women who don't have college degrees, while others are merely just chalking it up to racism and misogyny from all the groups. But that in turn would mean that the overwhelming majority of Americans, male, female, Black, white, Latino, etc., are all guilty of these traits while also clearly being in favor of totalitarian fascism. And you know what? Those tactics may have worked like about 6-8 years ago, but we're way past that at this point, and I think the numbers show it. Anyone thinking critically would see that that just doesn't make sense, and that could never be the reason for such a turnout. No, the answer is clear, and it's been waving the star-spangled banner of hard truths in our face for almost about 10 years now. And I think that it was beautifully articulated by someone who I'd argue knows pretty well. Miss Julie Rajinsky. I don't know. She's a strategist for the Democratic Party, and she shared what I think is a pretty self-reflective take on why this happened on CNN the other day. Check it out.
I'm going to speak some hard truths to my friends in the Democratic Party. This is not Joe Biden's fault. It's not Kamala Harris's fault. It's not Barack Obama's fault. It is the fault of the Democratic Party in not knowing how to communicate effectively to voters. We are not the party of common sense, which is what the message that voters sent to us. For a number of reasons. We don't know how to speak to voters. When we address Latino, and language has meaning. When we address Latino voters as Latinx, for instance, because that's the politically correct thing to do. It makes them think that we don't even live on the same planet as they do. When we are too afraid to say that, hey, college kids, if you're trashing a campus at Columbia University because you're unhappy about some sort of policy and you're taking over a university, and you're trashing it and preventing other students from learning, that is unacceptable. But we're so worried about alienating one or another cohort in our coalition that we don't know what to say when normal people look at that and say, wait a second, I send my kids to college so they can learn, not so that they can burn buildings and trash lawns, right? And so on and so forth. When we put pronouns after names and say she, her, as opposed to saying, you know what, if I call you by the wrong pronoun, call me out, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. But stop with the virtue signaling and just speak to people like they're normal. There's nothing I'm going to say to Michael that I'm not going to say to you, that I'm not going to say to somebody else. I speak the same language to everybody. But that's not what Democrats do. We constantly try to parse out different ways of speaking to different cohorts because our focus groups or our polling shows that so-and-so appeals to such and such. That's not how normal people think. It's not common sense. And we need to start being the party of common sense again. Joe Biden is not responsible for that. Neither is Kamala Harris. It is a problem that Democrats have had for years. I've been banging the drum on this for, I don't know how, probably 10 years, if not longer on this. We need to get back to being the party of common sense, that people look at us and say, we understand you, we appreciate what you say because you speak our language. And until we do that, we should stop blaming other people for our own mistakes.
Plain and simple. No more common sense. The Democratic Party is out of touch. They do not know what regular, normal people want, and which is why now they're being met with so much criticism. You'll probably have heard already that a good chunk of the people that voted for Harris were the educated elite. You know, it's kind of shocking and kind of backwards that the party that once used to represent the working class and the average, everyday American, now only appeals to people in a higher tax bracket who, know a little more. And of course, this has been used to, shame people that voted for Trump. You see, like, even on The View, like I said earlier, they're shaming, like, oh, well, you're just dumb and uneducated. Like, you don't know. Like, of course you made that choice. And that's obviously not smart. I think that shaming people, name calling, all the things that, the Democratic candidates have been accusing their opposition the entire time are things that they're guilty of. And I think they prioritize identity politics way more than they should over the core issues. At the end of the day, you can never get rid of bigotry. You can never get rid of racism, sexism, hatred, like all around. And that's not me saying like, oh, well, because people who represented Trump, they definitely are all like that. I highly doubt that. I think even on the Democrat side that you'll find a lot of, hypocrites and bigots. I think that's just human nature. But at the end of the day, the things that the Democrats prioritize and worry about and the things they avoid talking about just don't connect with voters. But what do you think? Why do you think that the Democrats lost abysmally? Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks.